Imagine a land perched at the very edge of the world, a final exhale of Earth's imagination, a place where volcanoes roared, giant birds roamed, and the last human footsteps in the great wave of global migration finally stopped. Here, a proud people forged a complex society of intricate diplomacy, brutal warfare, and deep spiritual connection with land and sea. And just when the modern world came knocking, with guns, Bibles, and treaties, they stood together, under one flag, as a fledgling sovereign nation. A proud confederation forged not by colonizers, but by indigenous people raising their voices in unity. An indigenous sovereign entity that flew its own flag, signed international treaties, and stood toe-to-toe with the British Crown. This was no fleeting fantasy. It was a country recognized, named, and respected, before being abolished and replaced by a colonial settler project now known to the world. Was this an example of lost nation erased by a colonial shadow? Or maybe not. Welcome to the Library of Lost Lands, where we delve into the stories of countries that once were, but are no longer with us. The United Tribes of New Zealand, or in Māori, Te Wakaminenga o Ngā Hapu o Nū Tireni, was formed in 1835 and lasted until its authority was effectively absorbed by the Treaty of Waitangi in 1840. Its informal capital was Waitangi, and its flag, chosen in a public hui or assembly, featured a red cross on a white field with stars in the upper left, bold and striking. Though never fully centralized, it was home to tens of thousands of Māori from dozens of iwi, or tribes, and its authority came not from coercion but consensus. But let's step back, way back to the start, when humans first encountered an unknown archipelago at the end of the world. They called it Aotearoa, the land of the long white cloud. According to tradition, the Polynesian navigator Kupe was first to arrive, steering double-hulled canoes across the Pacific, discovering a realm of towering kauri trees, smoking peaks, and flightless moa. This was the last great landmass on Earth to be settled by humans in approximately 1350 AD. Over centuries, Māori developed a rich society of hapu, subtribes, and iwi, tribes, governed by complex kinship structures and led by rungatira, chiefs. They fought fiercely for mana, prestige, and utu, reciprocity or revenge. There were no central kings, only negotiated alliances and rivalries woven through generations. Alone and isolated at the end of the world, Maori civilization finally encountered the rest of the world with the arrival of Dutch explorer Abel Tasman in 1642. Then came the outsiders: sealers, whalers, missionaries, and traders from Britain, France, the United States, and other countries arrived in growing numbers by the late 1700s. With them came iron tools and muskets. What followed was a devastating upheaval, the Musket Wars. Between 1807 and 1837, Māori turned these new weapons on each other. Tens of thousands were killed, enslaved, or displaced. The political landscape fragmented and bloodied, but a new awareness emerged, an understanding that the world was changing, and unity might be necessary for survival. The British, at the time, did not yet claim sovereignty over New Zealand, but they were anxious about growing French interest. Māori had already been engaging in global trade, especially in flax, timber, and food, and had traveled as sailors across the Pacific. With no recognized authority, Maori ships were being seized in foreign ports such as Sydney for lack of an official flag. So in 1835, under the guidance of British resident James Busby, 34 northern chiefs signed He Wakaputanga o Te Rangatiratanga o Nū Tireni, the Declaration of Independence. The United Tribes were born, a loose but real expression of Maori sovereignty, declaring New Zealand an independent Maori nation. Though fragile, the United Tribes showed extraordinary vision. Here were indigenous leaders, many of them fierce rivals, coming together to articulate national unity. They selected a flag, engaged in international diplomacy, and drew up the kind of collective governance many colonized peoples never got the chance to imagine. In 1836, King William IV of Britain officially recognized the flag and the declaration, effectively recognizing the United Tribes internationally as a sovereign entity. The flag was registered with the British Admiralty, giving Maori commercial operators international recognition, a rare status for an indigenous people in that era. That recognition made the United Tribes a counterparty to the Treaty of Waitangi that would follow. The flag was seen on ships from Sydney, across Australia and the Pacific, and beyond. But unity was not easy. The confederation was largely limited to the northern iwi, particularly Ngāpuhi. It lacked enforcement power, administrative machinery, and was vulnerable to tribal rivalries and regional fragmentation. Moreover, British settlers continued to arrive in increasing numbers, bringing their own legal systems and imperial assumptions. The declaration was written and understood differently by Maori and Europeans, the former seeing it as a guarantee of independence, the latter as a prelude to colonization. In 1840, Governor William Hobson arrived with a new mission to secure British sovereignty. The Treaty of Waitangi, Treaty of Waitangi, was signed between the Crown and the Confederation of the United Tribes, plus other Maori chiefs, over 500 in total. Article 1 of the Te Reo Maori version refers to the transfer of kawanatanga, governorship, not rangatiratanga or chieftainship, which many Maori saw as still intact. Article 2 reaffirmed Maori authority over their lands. The English version, however, spoke of ceding full sovereignty. The treaty did not annul the declaration, it superseded it, effectively dissolving the United Tribes in function if not in spirit. The decades that followed saw increasing alienation of Maori land, broken promises and warfare. The Crown treated the treaty as a license to govern, but many Maori never saw it that way. A chieftain, Te Wero, would later become the first Maori king in a different form of pan-tribal unity, the Kingatanga movement. Today, the flag of the United Tribes and the Union Jack both fly over the treaty house at Waitangi, symbols of a dual heritage that remains contested. The Declaration of Independence, though eclipsed by the treaty, is still remembered as a statement of intent. Maori sovereignty, Maori voice. The flag chosen in 1834 remains a living symbol, flown on mare across the country and at Waitangi each year. He Wakaputanga has resurfaced in legal and political debates, including in Waitangi tribunal proceedings. Many Maori assert that sovereignty was never ceded, that the declaration remains a founding document of Maori self-determination. In 2019, the Crown formally acknowledged He Wakaputanga as part of New Zealand's constitutional story. The spirit of the United Tribes, its assertion of rangatiratanga, its effort to govern with dignity and autonomy, echoes in modern debates over Indigenous rights, partnership, and power sharing. So what was the United Tribes of New Zealand? A fleeting proto-state? A diplomatic gesture? Or the first real assertion of Maori nationhood on the world stage? Its memory is woven into flags, treaties, and living struggles. A lost land, perhaps, but never a forgotten one. Or perhaps a sovereignty not lost at all. A country that's always been with us, not on every map, but in the heart of its people. Its mana undiminished, its voice growing louder with each generation. This was no imperial construct, nor a frontier mirage. This was an expression of self-determination by a proud people from the edge of the world, a declaration of unity, sovereignty, and hope. They stared down the greatest empire on earth. They signed as equals. And though battles raged and land was taken, their sovereignty was not surrendered, and their story is far from over. In the end, perhaps the United Tribes of New Zealand was not a nation that failed to last, but a nation that never stopped enduring. Te waka minenga o Ngahapu o Nutireni, the United Tribes of New Zealand. Thanks for watching the Library of Lost Lands. If this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments. What does sovereignty mean in a land still grappling with its founding promises?